Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Channel Bryon Lape Reads. And here we have more information, some, take on a thing when it comes to Star Wars. So this is from the avclub.com. Sam Barsanti. Barsanti? I guess it'd be Barsanti. So Elizabeth Ridley, Daisy Ridley, who must be new here, wonders where all the love, in air quotes, for Star Wars went. Now, this is very interesting. I haven't read this article, so I don't know where they're going, but I'm going to assume, and I know what that does, that her belief that there was love for Star Wars, the Disney Wars in particular, the one that she's in, because people still love the originals, is the way people reacted to The Force Awakens. The Force Awakens was this event, essentially. Full disclosure, I did not like The Force Awakens. I gave it a very confused 7 out of 10. But I was very reluctant, very confused because I wasn't sure what in the world. I was like, wait a minute, I've already seen this movie. I knew right up from the start it was just a rehash. I knew before it was opening we were going to get a soft reboot, but I didn't know how bad it was going to be. And of course, many, many people who loved The Force Awakens said, oh, just wait, the next movie will answer a lot of your questions. And of course, then we got The Last Jedi. And it just went downhill. So that's where I'm going to guess this thing goes. Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker is now available on home video, marking an end to what Disney dubbed the Skywalker Saga, which is bullcrap. But anyway, so it seems like, because they killed them all off, like this is the perfect time for everyone to try and process their feelings about Disney's sequel trilogy. All the Skywalkers are dead. Earlier this month, we saw the animated version of Colin Trevorrow's unused script. Mark Hamill wrote a letter to the fans who stuck with the series, and then Force Awakens editor Mary Jo Mackey explained about how Last Jedi undid all of JJ's carefully laid plans. He didn't have any plans. That is the problem. Abrams is about mystery box. He's not about answering anything. And every time he's done a second movie, it just gets worse. And, Star Trek, the reboot of that was filled with lots of explosions and lens flares and all this other nonsense. And he blew up a planet for no reason. And then, of course, the second one, he just copped out and redid Wrath of Khan. And Star Wars, he redid the original. He pulled in a few elements from the other movies, but it's pretty much a rehash of A New Hope. Done again, flashiness, no substance. Okay. There was no storytelling going on. And that is the problem. And we got the Rise of Skywalker. I call it payoff the movie. When I was watching it, I thought, JJ, if you would have set any of this up, the payoffs that were in that movie, had that been set up and had it been carried through in The Last Jedi, and had we had hints of some of this stuff, I think it definitely would have been a better series than the prequels. Probably not as good as the originals. It's hard to beat the originals, but definitely would have just crushed the prequels. Which we had, stories. To me, I didn't like the story nor the execution. This one, everything was bad. Everything was just flash in the pan. And the second you look at something and think about it, it has zero rewatchability. Whereas the originals, you could watch hundreds and thousands of times. The story, you can even watch the prequels a lot if you want to sit through a lot of painful dialogue, but the stories that are there can be retold and revisited over and over. There's no story in the Disney Star Wars, and that is the biggest problem. Even though we all know those plans weren't actually going to anywhere, since Abrams is famously obsessed with mystery boxes. Oh, look at that. They don't necessarily have resolution. So, and I had not read that until now. Now, Daisy Ridley has joined in, revealing in a recent interview on Nina West's Dragcast via NME that she was kind of surprised by the backlash that The Rise of Skywalker received when it came out. Really? That's bizarre. Ridley says 98% of the experience making Star Wars movies was amazing, but after Rise of Skywalker, it was really tricky. She says January after the movie came out was not that nice, to the point where she wondered where the love for the series had gone. It died with the Last Jedi. Now, granted, I have friends of mine who love The Last Jedi. They think it's the second. I don't know if anybody that puts it as the best, but they definitely put it somewhere. Some like it. Empire is still the number one. Okay. And granted, I was around for the originals. I was around, I was 12 years old in 1980. So you do the math. But at the time, Empire, it was not hated. Like a lot of people said, that's baloney. It was, people were confused, but it's like, but we were like, did Vader lie to Luke? Was it real? Is he just trying to get him to the dark side? Is that really his father? It didn't do as well as the original, but again, the original Star Wars in '77 was just lightning in a bottle, and then it went up for the Return of the Jedi, and that's also something I've noticed about the originals. They have much better titles. It wasn't the like we have now. We had the Phantom Menace, Revenge of the Sith, and Attack of the Clones. Even with the prequels, we don't have that nonsense. Especially when she felt really proud of what they made and was so thrilled to be part of it. Okay, I skipped something. Okay, she notes that everyone's entitled to their own opinion, that social media generally allows negative reactions to gain more traction than they otherwise would. But she says it was hard to keep seeing posts from people who didn't like the movie. Because it was garbage, okay? And this is where, in people who don't like the prequels, and Jake Lloyd and Yasmin Best, the guy who played Jar Jar, they got a lot of crap from people, and I think that's criminal. It's not their fault. They didn't write the movie. They didn't direct the movie. If you don't like the story and the movie progression, that's the writers of the script. In this case, you have a team. This was a movie by committee, and the direction that they get, and we can make some judgments about how good Daisy and some of her other fellow actors are as actors, but they're not the ones writing it, and they're not the ones that say, "Yep, cut, print, that was awesome." Right? They're only doing what they're told to do. So taking out on any of the actors is just stupid, and I don't care even if they say, "Oh, the fans are idiots." That's their opinion, but I think so many people, it's like for those people who really liked The Last Jedi, The Rise of Skywalker tried to undo it, and that pissed them off. Those of us who didn't like any of the Disney Star Wars and were disappointed, it was like, that's what I said, this is why I like calling it pay off the movie. If that would have been where the entire series was going from the start, I think it would have been better, much better than the prequels. It would have a storyline. Rey would actually have a progression and not be a Mary Sue. Finn would have been better utilized. So that probably my biggest problem is what they did to Finn. Especially in the second one. I mean, he was already a racial joke in the first one, and then they just cranked up the racism in the second one. Thank you very much, Rian Johnson. Basically, Daisy Ridley enjoyed making her stuff. I'm glad she had a great time. That's awesome, and I hope she got some friendships that are going to last her for the rest of her life, with Oscar Isaac and John Boyega and whomever else. And I hope they get together and talk about it. And who knows? I hope they all have better careers than the original cast. The only ones that had any kind of a career was Harrison Ford. And he was able to parlay that on not only Indiana Jones, which, he wasn't supposed to be a part of, Tom Selleck was, and it didn't work out. Then he did other things too. Hamill did more work in theater and then did stuff with, the Joker and other comics. So they had very, differing careers. Basically, Daisy Ridley enjoyed making, okay, I was proud of them. Fine. But it threw her off to see that her experience didn't necessarily translate into a good film. And again, that's not the actor's fault. And also, I really want to see, even though it was a boring, I mean, I was bored. I almost fell asleep watching The Force Awakens. And a friend of mine, a former colleague of mine, he did fall asleep watching it, and his wife nudged him when he was snoring in the theater because it's so boring. When it's just action, your brain just turns off and you're just bored out because there's nothing to follow. There's no reason to be mentally stimulated, mentally awake in the movie, not keeping track of stuff. It's boring. So this is what I hate the Marvel movies. They just, they're punching again. Okay, great. So it makes us wonder if anybody has briefed her on, say, the reaction to the Star Wars prequels or the remasters with new effects. And the originals with George Lucas kept picking at this cat, and it's like, dude, and I only have the originals on VHS, okay? The remaster was of the audio, and it was cleaned up a little bit, and that was it. None of them after that, all that other special edition nonsense that he did to him, it irritates me. Literally any other Star Wars thing that hasn't been met with overwhelming enthusiasm. Hell, The Last Jedi was one of the best things to happen to this series in decades, and people are still arguing about how it was actually bad. It was actually bad. Structurally, just from a movie-making standpoint, it was bad. It's one thing to be disappointed that fans don't like the movie, but no one should be surprised that Star Wars fans don't like, most of them don't even like Star Wars. Yeah, and that's kind of become a cliche. But I'm beginning to fully believe that what people like were the originals, and that's it. And nothing else is Star Wars. I mean, that was part of why I didn't like the prequels. It didn't feel like Star Wars. Like my cousin thought I was crazy. But it's like I would love to go back to 15-year-old me sitting in the movie theater watching the credits, the Return of the Jedi roll, okay, and say, and couldn't wait for the next one, saying, there are no more Star Wars movies. And you can look at them as a generational thing, but it's amazing how much the prequels got a lot of love at first. The hate took a long time, and the hate came from older fans. My kids loved them when they were little. But once they realized there was no story there and they didn't watch them and they watched the originals over and over and over again, they realized the story arc and all that other stuff there. Because the story's there in the prequels is just a lot harder to follow. And then they liked the new one. By The Last Jedi, they were done. And my daughter still hasn't seen, I think she may have finally saw The Last Jedi, and she was more pissed off about it than I was. I don't know why it was good. It was a mess. Star Wars can be accused of being great art. Okay. Except it wasn't a mess from start to finish. It had issue. No, it was not. Either. Yeah. Had an extremely boring, slow speed chase at its central plot. Yep, a ham-fisted, lame Casino Planet side plot, and the worst of all, by far, with too many examples to mention, was a subverting of expectations, deconstructionist machine to such an absurd extent that the entire movie was a joke. Yeah, and that's all Rian was trying to do. Rian was trying to, he said this in an interview back in the 90s. He wants to be able to make a movie where 45% of the audience hates it, 45% of the audience loves it, and the other 10% doesn't know what they saw. And that's exactly what we got. Actually good, but Chandler makes it look like that's true. The official AV Club party line is Last Jedi was an amazing movie that revitalized the franchise. If you don't like it, it's a bummer that the cast had to be buffeted around by such. Oh, if this person says, and this is, I wonder if they're going to get the Kelly Marie Tran nonsense wrong again. Myself actually took advantage of the cast and did some amazing stuff. No, it didn't. Only to have ROS turn out to be a vaudeville act for all this. Okay. I've been unnecessary experience. So I'm going to watch prequels as something intriguing. What if exercise? I can, and there is a cut of the 2 and 3 together as one long movie that actually is pretty good. I haven't seen it. At least that's the scuttlebutt. To blank check this weekend, and then bring up the fact that the planning of the trilogy was only become an idea since Marvel dominated the franchise world. I can't name a single 3 trilogy that was planned out from start to finish, as Griffin points out. Even Marvel was retooling its story arcs with the releases. Because sometimes things change. Some things don't work. The storyline has to be adapted, but having an idea for Feige to do all those different elements, put all those different pieces in the movies over multiple years and then have them pay off in some ways in Infinity War. But there are parts of Endgame that, are threads that are 5, 6, 7 years old that come together in one movie. Indicate that you don't need a plan. You just need time, not the 2-year, and a director with a strong vision, not JJ, especially when it comes to, he doesn't know what he's doing. And neither does Rian. Although there are people who I know who don't like Rian Johnson, but then watched Knives Out and they're like, it's actually a good movie. So I think if he stays in his genre, that kind of movie, but his idea of what a good movie is works for the Knives Out. It does not work for Star Wars. Someone went away when Disney decided that we all wanted, was a slapdash sequel trilogy that made our childhood heroes miserable failures. Yeah. Cowards and parents of us. School shooter, and then totally cut the finale of the original films by having Palpatine survive more. Yeah, absolutely. Is that Goth? Yeah, you get it. I know someone who had to say goodbye to her Nana on an iPad the other day. In other words, what does that got to do with anything? My God, Superstar are just terrible. They're just movies, man. Okay, whatever. But anyway, I don't want to go through all the other comments. How many? I mean, you reach. Just the worst is okay, whatever. Anyway, so Daisy, I think that was where a lot of it happened. I knew a lot of people who were willing to forgive The Force Awakens, even though it was a repeat, as long as the trilogy went somewhere. And then again, The Last Jedi has just so divided the fan base that I don't know if it is ever going to recover. And Solo, Solo may have done better when it came, if it would have come out a year later instead of a few months later when the hatred. But my theory was that Disney didn't want it competing with the Mary Poppins sequel, which absolutely crapped. Most people I know who saw it just didn't like it at all. And it was kind of like fair to Midland to ugh, okay, and it didn't do that well, and that was a mistake. And we'll see. The Mandalorian might help rescue it, but I think season 2 is gonna. I think they're gonna go in a way that the fans aren't gonna like, just like Marvel is doing with Phase 4. I think the MCU is going to come crashing down. It's all going to crumble around the feet of Captain Marvel, and what we'll see. But again, if you don't hate the movies, not the actors, right? They're just hired to do a job. I think Daisy Ridley was, she's okay cast as Rey, but it doesn't fully work. And that's just a miscasting. I think Boyega, because now I've seen him in other stuff, they could have done a lot more with Finn. And Finn, I still go back to, I think Rey should have been, I think she and Kylo should have been around the same age, trained with Luke. Kylo has whatever you want to have Luke do, something, it falls apart, and she's drawn, to Jakku and is in hiding in many ways for Finn to show up, for the Force, if you will, to bring Finn to there. And then Rey encounters him in train, and that's the awakening. And that's what he wanted to tell Rey in the first one, but in the last one, don't have those other troopers show up, the former, because if you that weakens, in my way, that waters down Finn's journey. Finn was kidnapped from birth, taken from his parents from birth, brainwashed to be a stormtrooper, and then the Force. This is why I think in Kylo suddenly looking at him, all these, he feels that there's a trooper not shooting, and he looks at him. And I think that should have been the storyline, is Finn should have been becoming a Jedi, and you can have Daisy be a Jedi, fairly young, say early 20s, or her age, or Rey, I should say. But then cast Kylo Ren as someone, don't make him an emo Darth Vader wannabe, make him a fully on Sith. He's not an apprentice, okay? He's as much as a Sith as Rey is a Jedi. Maybe you still have Snoke, and maybe have Luke, and have the battle be over what's Finn going to do. And don't make it no redemption arc, okay? And, and I think that would have been a much better movie than the nonsense we got. So, and it's less likely they would have made Finn the butt of a bunch of racist jokes, which is what they did in all 3 movies. And I'm surprised people are not more upset about that than they are. And that really, really irritated me in the Force Awakens, and it absolutely irritated me in The Last Jedi. And they did a little bit of it it wasn't as bad in The Rise of Skywalker, but it was still there, and it was ridiculous. So, well, what do you think where the love for Star Wars went? You think it's going to, I think it's going to revolve around the originals. The originals are going to be loved, and the rest of it's going to be forgotten. I think the prequels will be liked by somebody, but the Disney Star Wars is completely forgettable, and it'll be flushed down the toilet like a floating turd, and people will just not even acknowledge that they exist. So that's how I, Channel Dad Bryon Lape, see it. And let me know what you think. Goodbye. All right, 3, 2, 1.